Gray Henderson sat in the dilapidated booth of a crowded outpost canteen, drumming his fingers on a chipped tabletop while neon lights flickered overhead. He looked like an afterthought in the swirling mix of mercenaries, smugglers, and interstellar vagabonds. The seat beside him was empty except for the battered helmet he carried, etched with insignias from past battles and scuffed by the wear of countless missions. The canteen smelled of cheap synthahol, burnt alien spices, and the distinct tang of anxiety that followed anyone living on the edge of civilized space. No one paid Gray much attention, though. He preferred it that way. He'd been nursing the same drink for an hour, some unidentifiable glowing liquid that looked like coolant, and ignoring the subtle hum in his earpiece. That hum was his AI, ironically named Barney, trying to get his attention. Barney was integrated into Gray's wristcom, which he wore at all times. It was a piece of technology that had survived countless catastrophes just like him. He finally pressed a finger to the comm. "All right, Barney, speak. But make it quick. I'm enjoying the ambience." "Sir," the AI said in a tone that always sounded perpetually annoyed, "the scans we ran on the intercepted signal from the Stellar Veil region have finished decoding. The results indicate strong psychic activity. I'd advise discarding any notion of traveling there for your usual brand of fun." Gray snorted. "You say that like it's a bad idea. History suggests that any time you decide to investigate something deemed highly dangerous or suicidally stupid, the entire galaxy ends up hearing about it, and you end up with new scars." Barney paused. "Additionally, your psychological evaluation from the last mercenary group you worked with was less than stellar, citing, among other things, a pathological willingness to provoke forces beyond comprehension. Are we ignoring that today as well?" Gray smirked at the mention of his psychological record. "Of course we are. Now, what exactly did we decode?" Barney emitted a digital sigh. "It's a repetitive transmission. You cannot escape. You will be brought into unity. Accept assimilation. There's no official identification code, but cross-references indicate it could be connected to that rumored hive mind expanding in the region. The top brass of the Galactic Alliance has labeled that place a no-go zone." Gray rolled his eyes and stood from a booth. "Perfect place for a quick vacation, then. Let's go see how they handle a human with a disorganized brain." He left a few credits on the table, enough to cover the weird, glowing drink, and made his way through the outpost's cramped corridors, brushing shoulders with reptilian traders and bionic couriers. They gave him a sideways look, sensing the confidence that clung to him like a second skin. Gray walked with long strides, eventually reaching the external docking bay. Towering overhead was his ship, the Space Oddity, an eclectic vessel whose battered hull was plastered with the remains of comedic stickers, half-ripped mission badges, and sarcastic slogans in multiple languages. He paused for a moment to admire the ship. Despite the peeling paint and numerous dents, it remained a constant companion, a fortress of technology that housed both memories and the library of junk data from Earth that Gray guarded like a priceless treasure. No one else understood why he was so obsessed with old memes, bizarre video clips, and earworm songs. Most dismissed it as an eccentric hobby, but Gray knew better. He had lived through a war in which these very tidbits of chaotic human culture had served as an impromptu line of defense against telepathic infiltration. He keyed in his access code. The ramp extended, and he marched inside. The cargo bay was cluttered with metallic crates, some labeled with half-legible words like Ancestral Earth Archives, handle with caution. Others contained standard rations or spare parts. As soon as he entered, the overhead lights blinked on, and Barney's voice resonated through the speakers. "Welcome aboard, sir. I have taken the liberty of charting the potential courses to that broadcast's origin. I assume your next command is to disregard all safety warnings and plot a direct route. You know me so well, Barney." Moments later, Gray was strapped into the pilot's seat, an aging but comfortable chair with wires poking out the sides. The Space Oddity hummed as its engines warmed up, lifting off in the outpost bay. Beyond the docking shield lay the infinite sprawl of stars. Gray guided the vessel away from traffic, then engaged the warp drive. The ship elongated into a streak against the starfield, disappearing into faster-than-light travel. During warp, Gray flicked through data on the projected hive mind. He'd heard rumors. Entire civilizations simply fell silent, absorbed into a collective intelligence that spread like a plague. Resistance was crushed. Diplomatic. Overtures were subverted from within. Yet no one seemed to know exactly how it worked, only that it leveraged potent telepathic abilities to unite throngs of species into a single overarching consciousness. Barney's voice cut through Gray's thoughts. ETA to the Stellar Veil region is 30 standard hours. We have enough fuel reserves, but I strongly recommend caution. If half the rumors about that hive mind are true, we're dealing with the kind of entity that could rewrite your mind as easily as you rewrite your shopping list. Good thing my brain's a mess, Gray said, leaning back. They'll find out the hard way that rummaging around in my head isn't a free ticket to universal knowledge. Barney's tone grew serious. You survived the war against the Terrors because your mind was so unusual that their telepathic infiltration protocols failed. That's not exactly comforting, sir. Also, might I remind you that in your last infiltration mission, you nearly gave a telepathic alien an existential crisis. Gray chuckled at the memory. He tried to read my mind. He discovered 1980s Earth commercials for fast food clowns and cheaply made car insurance jingles. What did he expect? Barney just sighed in resignation. I'll begin pre-scans for the system. Try not to end civilization as we know it. The space oddity emerged from warp amid a swirl of cosmic dust and the faint glimmer of star clusters. On scanners, the planet that seemed to be the source of the transmissions loomed below, veiled in shifting green clouds. Strange spires jutted from its surface, almost like spines on a vast creature's back. As soon as they dropped out of FTL, the hiss of telepathic static rippled through the comm channels. Receiving a direct mental hail, Barney said. Something is trying to broadcast into the ship. Should I block it? Gray hesitated. Let it through, but keep the defensive protocols ready. I want to see what they're trying to tell me. Static crackled. Then an eerie, multi-layered voice echoed in Gray's head, synchronized with the speakers. Humans, your presence is known. You will submit to the unity. We sense your single consciousness trembling before our might. Surrender. Accept the oneness. Gray raised an eyebrow. That's the most generic villain speech I've heard in a while. Do they teach that in Evil Overlord Academy? Barney added, I'll broadcast your response if you like. With a smirk, Gray nodded. Let them have a taste of this. He tapped a control on the console, uploading a short but extremely chaotic audio file, a mashup of cartoonish screams, whiny pop music, and bizarre robotic laughter. The clip blasted back through the telepathic channel. It was petty, but he was curious how they'd react. A moment passed in silence. Then a flicker of confusion slid through the mental static, as if the hive mind was processing something profoundly nonsensical. The broadcast abruptly cut off. Interesting, Gray said quietly. We might have gotten under their exoskeleton. Barney was not amused. Congratulations, sir. You may have just provoked an interstellar force. Reading new movement on planetary orbit. Looks like a patrol craft from that hive mind is coming our way. Sure enough, a spindly insectoid vessel rose from the planet's surface. It glinted in the star's light like obsidian, scanning the area. Brace yourself, Gray said, flicking switches. Let's see how they plan to greet us. Energy beams lanced out from the alien craft, but Gray jinked the space oddity sideways, letting the shots fizzle against the ship's shields. Barney reported damage at a minimal level. Gray accelerated, pulling into a wide arc to slip behind the patrol craft. The enemies maneuvered gracefully, but their confusion was evident in their staggered approach. Gray launched a brief electronic warfare spike, part of his personal modifications. Instead of conventional jamming signals, he unleashed carefully curated nonsense. A data stream of comedic Earth videos, hammered into an unholy code that scrambled telepathic attempts to link with the starship systems. The result was, predictably, chaos. The patrol craft's flight path went erratic, weaving drunkenly through space. Gray seized the moment and powered forward, slipping past them. There was a sputter of telepathic static in his mind, like they were trying to reconnect or reassert control, but it broke off once again. Patrol craft is disabled for now, Barney said. I detect them spinning in circles, possibly in a meltdown from your meme warfare. Going to set a course for the surface? I take it. You read my mind, Gray replied. We're not leaving until we see what's down there. The space oddity descended into the planet's atmosphere, piercing green clouds that sparked with electrical discharges. Strange towers of organic matter twisted out of the ground, connected by thick strands reminiscent of spider silk but tens of meters wide. The entire place pulsed with a soft glow like bioluminescent veins. Gray set the ship down in a clearing surrounded by fleshy outcroppings that resembled stony stalagmites if they had grown out of a giant living organism. The ramp lowered. Outside, the air tasted of chemicals and something sweetly rotten. Gray took a cautious breath, then slipped a portable rebreather over his mouth and nose. He equipped a simple sidearm, just in case, though he suspected conventional weapons might not matter against a powerful hive mind. At his belt, he carried a compact device loaded with all the junk data from Earth, his personal trove of comedic and chaotic digital relics. He stepped onto the alien soil, boots sinking slightly into spongy terrain. Overhead, clouds churned. Around him, stalagmite-like growths throbbed with pulses of light. The feeling of being watched was intense. He detected movements in the corner of his eye, spindly insect shapes darting behind ridges, climbing on chitinous walls. Yet they didn't attack him outright. Maybe they were studying him, trying to figure out why he wasn't cowering. He ventured forward, scanning the horizon for anything resembling an entrance to the deeper hive. It didn't take him long to see a large opening in the ground, ringed by twitching feelers. It looked like a tunnel mouth. He was about to stride toward it when a sudden shriek split the air. Out of nowhere, 3 or 4 insectoid guards emerged. Each was a towering bipedal creature with a tough exoskeleton, wide-set eyes, and sharp mandibles. Their carapaces were midnight black, glinting in the strange ambient light. They leveled some kind of organic weapon at Gray. One of them hissed in that layered mental voice. You will be processed. Resistance is not permitted. Gray raised his hands in mock surrender. Oh, by all means, process away. Though, I should warn you, I'm not particularly easy to digest. One guard approached, jerkily pushing Gray forward. Walk. You will see the Queen. Great, Gray said. We have so much to discuss, like interior decorating, for example. He let them march him across the spongy terrain, mindful of not making any sudden moves. He had expected something like this, a quick capture, an audience with the ruling entity. After all, that was precisely what he wanted. As they led him to the tunnel, he spotted a side alcove where a few alien prisoners were corralled behind a translucent barrier. They looked haggard, some scaly, some furred, others with strange, shimmering skin. Gray gave them a subtle nod, hoping they'd understand he was on their side. Their eyes were wide with fear, but a spark of curiosity flickered when they realized he was human and not trembling at the prospect of captivity. Down the tunnel, the temperature rose. The walls pulsed with that same eerie glow, occasionally secreting a thick fluid that ran along grooves in the floor. Gray couldn't help but comment, smells like the inside of a bug's nostril in here. The guard behind him thumped his back, presumably in annoyance, though it only made Gray grin. He remembered an old Earth saying, if you can still crack jokes, you're probably better off than most. After several winding corridors, they entered a cavernous central chamber. The roof soared overhead, and organic columns rose to meet it. Suspended pods dotted the walls, each with a captive figure trapped inside, eyes open and unblinking. At the far end of the chamber, elevated on a dais of living tissue, was the Queen. Her form was larger and more elaborate than that of the drones. A multi-segmented abdomen extended behind her, while her upper torso possessed elongated limbs and a crown of pulsating sensory organs. Compound eyes reflected 1,000 angles of the chamber's luminescence. She was flanked by smaller, specialized drones, possibly attendants or bodyguards. Gray was shoved forward until he stood a few meters from her. The Queen regarded him with what appeared to be interest or perhaps distaste. Her telepathic voice, layered with the echo of many minds, drilled into him. You stand before the Unity. Why do you not bow, human? Do you not sense our power? Gray shrugged. I prefer to keep my dignity upright. Some of the drones shifted uneasily at his irreverent tone. The Queen let out a sound somewhere between a hiss and a click. Your species is strange. Most who encounter us come trembling, begging for mercy, but you appear untroubled. Gray swept a glance around the chamber. He saw the rows of contained prisoners, each species clearly taken from their homeworlds. You like collecting folks, don't you? Must be a big hobby, enslaving entire civilizations. The weak surrender to the strong, the Queen stated, her voice reverberating. Through assimilation, conflict is eliminated. We achieve a perfect harmony of purpose. Gray raised an eyebrow. I see a bunch of captives, not harmony. This is forced consensus. You're basically running the galaxy's biggest hostage situation. A ripple of psychic tension coursed through the chamber. The Queen leaned forward, antennae quivering. You mock what you cannot comprehend. Our oneness transcends petty individuality. I'd rather be petty and free, Gray said, crossing his arms. Don't you wonder why I'm not cowering? Maybe it's because your fancy psychic powers are about to run into the mental equivalent of a dumpster fire. Her compound eyes narrowed. She reached out, one long appendage hovering near Gray's temple. Let us see how your mind stands against ours, human. A guard tried to hold Gray still, but he didn't resist. The Queen pressed a chitinous limb to his forehead, forging a direct telepathic connection. Gray felt it like an electric shock through his skull. He inhaled sharply. This was it, the moment he'd been anticipating. The hive mind tried to stream in, to read him, to reshape him. Instead, it collided with an avalanche of curated absurdities. He pictured a swirling maelstrom of old Earth memes, half of them out of context. Fleeting images of dancing hot dogs, cartoon cats, perplexing jokes. He amplified the barrage with every bit of comedic nonsense he could dredge from his memory banks. At the same time, the device on his belt activated, funneling a compressed data torrent into the psychic link. Bizarre digital artifacts, random music remixes, and the dreaded earworm tunes that humans had spent centuries collecting. The Queen recoiled, physically jerking away. Her shriek tore through the room, echoing in the minds of every drone. What is this? What madness? Gray's eyes glinted with triumphant mischief. We call it culture. Enjoy. For a second, the entire hive seemed to shudder. Some drones clutched their heads or ran in circles, overwhelmed by the flood of incongruent data. The Queen struggled to maintain composure, but the forced connection had broken open a channel, letting Gray pour in more unfiltered nonsense. In his mind, he guided her deeper into an ocean of disjointed pop references, comedic sketches, and kaleidoscopic imagery. She roared, trying to reassert control. Her mind lunged through the swirling chaos, seeking a pattern to exploit, a fear to amplify. She found glimpses of Gray's memories, his humiliating childhood moment calling a teacher mom, his disastrous first kiss, that time he performed a cringe-inducing karaoke in front of crowd. But instead of using these to shame him, she discovered that Gray had already made a joke of them, forging them into self-deprecating anecdotes that no longer held power over him. Stop, she demanded, compound eyes flickering with disorientation. This is impossible. You should be terrified. Gray clenched his jaw. The mental link was a two-way street. He sensed the enormous presence of the hive mind, a tapestry of thoughts from countless species. He felt those minds forcibly pinned beneath the Queen's dominating will. But the structure was precarious, reliant on unwavering psychic command. If that command wavered, with a surge of focus, he broadcast a single powerful thought. Wake up. He repeated it like a mantra, sending it to the billions of captive minds suppressed within the hive mind. He pictured each alien consciousness as a tiny beacon, trapped beneath swirling dark currents. One by one, he hammered on their metaphorical prison doors, letting them feel the madness that was rattling the Queen's concentration. The entire cavern rumbled. Pods flickered with sudden activity. The drones began hissing in confusion, some stumbling, others flailing. The Queen's shriek rose, and Gray could see the shock on her face. She was fighting on multiple fronts now, trying to reassert dominance over her drones, while also enduring the avalanche of Gray's mental garbage. Freed minds, even if only partially awakened, were pushing back. The alien prisoners in the chamber stirred, blinking as if emerging from a long slumber. One reptilian alien, eyes wide, pounded on the translucent barrier that caged it. The barrier flickered as the controlling psychic field faltered. Another captive, a tall humanoid with luminous stripes, uttered a single phrase in disbelief. We can think again." Gray seized the moment. He withdrew physically from the Queen's reach, though the link still crackled between them. Guards rushed forward to subdue him, but they, too, were affected by the confusion. One collapsed, trembling as images of dancing frogs and nonsense phrases racked its mind. Another drone started spouting random lines in a broken voice, something about cereal being a soup. The chamber's tension climbed to a crescendo. The Queen unleashed a desperate mental blast, trying to scramble Gray's thoughts. He braced himself, letting the intrusion come. She would only find more chaos, layer after layer of contradictory ideas. If his psyche was anything, it was an unholy labyrinth that no telepathic tyrant could easily navigate. He felt her presence slip on the slick surfaces of half-remembered internet arguments, substandard comedic parodies, and labyrinthine joke threads that led nowhere. She reeled, antennae thrashing. The dais beneath her crackled with organic energy, trying to restabilize the network. But the cracks in her dominion had spread too far. Pods were shutting down, freeing captive after captive. Some of the newly awakened aliens escaped their enclosures, stumbling into the chamber. Free drones, a minority who'd started to develop individuality even under the hive mind, hesitantly stepped away from the Queen, blinking in sudden self-awareness. Gray lunged to the side, pressing a sequence on his belt device. He triggered a final wave of earworm songs, layered with enough comedic nonsense to nauseate even the bravest soul. One of the loudest blasts was an off-key version of Baby Shark, repeated with a sinister echo, mashed together with random cartoon-themed tunes from centuries past. The result was an unholy symphony that hammered into the telepathic link. The Queen screeched, half collapsing. "Make it stop," she howled. "Make it SD." She cut off as more of her mental defenses shattered. Drones across the room froze or began strange, disjointed actions. Some started dancing in bizarre imitations of ancient human dance crazes. Others stared at each other in wide-eyed confusion, not sure what to do with their newfound autonomy. Freed prisoners converged, blinking away the haze of captivity. One of them, a scholar from a crystalline species, recognized Gray as the source of the chaos that had ironically set them free. The scholar ventured a trembling question. You are human, yes?" Gray turned and flashed a roguish grin. "Guilty as charged." Meanwhile, the Queen struggled to pull away from the dais, but her limbs shook. She locked eyes on Gray, the hatred seething. "You are an abomination," she spat. "No mind should be so fractured." "Welcome to the human condition," he shot back. "We're messy, contradictory, and we invented 1,000 different ways to amuse ourselves at the expense of reason. You want to control that? Good luck." She tried one last attempt, channeling a surge of energy through the chamber's walls. Organic cables lit up, and for a moment it seemed like she might succeed in reasserting control over her drones. But as soon as they began linking back to her will, the mimetic nonsense still swirling in her connection caused them to recoil. The entire hive mind was contaminated by the chaotic fragments of Gray's consciousness, rendering them incapable of returning to a unified state. Across the planet, the same phenomenon spread. Signals carried the glitchy mosaic of Gray's curated human madness. The countless drones that formed the hive's planetary workforce faltered. Some lay motionless. Others developed odd tics, mimicking half-remembered lines from comedic sketches. And still others, who had been teetering on the edge of individuality, seized the chance to break free altogether. In the central chamber, the queen slumped. "You have undone us," she rasped. "The hive cannot function with this corruption. I will destroy you and—" She coughed, unable to finish. Freed aliens gathered around her dais, many seething with the memory of captivity. But Gray stepped forward before they could lay vengeance upon her. He stared down at the queen, watching her trembling form. "Where I come from," he said softly, "we have a saying, a fate worse than death is living with the consequences of your actions. For you, that might be losing the entire hive mind you used as a crutch. No more controlling people. Now you get to exist with the knowledge that you lost to a brain full of silly references." She bared her fangs. "You think I cannot rebuild? Others will bow to me still." "Others? Not after they find out about the meltdown you just had," Gray interrupted. "Word travels fast among the stars, and you've just proven that your telepathic dominion isn't invincible." A hush fell over the chamber. Several newly freed drones cautiously approached, uncertain. One of them, a smaller insectoid shape with patterns etched into its carapace, perhaps self-etched, looked at the queen with ambivalence. The drone's voice was scratchy, uncertain as it spoke. We have awakened. We do not wish to vanish with the Unity, but we do not wish to be her slaves." The queen snarled. "You are nothing without my guidance." The small drone turned to Gray, seemingly seeking affirmation. Gray regarded the insect kindly. "Look at yourself. You have your own patterns, your own thoughts. That's not nothing. That's the start of being an individual." Something in the drone's expression, if one could call it that, shifted. It turned its gaze back to the queen. "Then we choose to live, to create without you." A ripple of agreement came from the other liberated drones that had begun to gather. One by one, they stepped away from the dais, physically distancing themselves from the queen's once dominant psychic field. The freed aliens from other species, some physically battered, some mentally drained, observed with awe. They were now glimpsing the miracle of a hive mind fracturing into independent minds. Gray exhaled, stepping back. Exhaustion settled in. That telepathic duel had drained him more than he cared to admit. He noticed Barney's voice chiming in his earpiece. "Sir, I'm picking up disruptions across the planet. The entire network is collapsing. Civilians of multiple species are emerging from captivity. The drones are, well, confused but no longer hostile en masse." "Guess that's our cue to help," Gray murmured. He turned to the newly freed prisoners, raising his voice. "Anyone who wants off this rock, my ship's in that clearing about half a kilometer north. We'll arrange transport, try to get you home, or at least to a safe port." An eruption of relieved chatter ensued. Dozens of captives began moving, some carrying those who were too weak to walk on their own. The small drone with the patterned carapace lingered, looking at the queen one last time before following the group. The queen remained on her dais, trembling with unrestrained rage, but powerless to hold them. Her domain was slipping from her claws. As Gray turned to leave, she growled, "Human, you will regret this. You think you can roam the galaxy with impunity? My brood will remember. One day, we will unite again." He paused, glancing over his shoulder with a hint of a grin. "If you ever do, you'll know exactly where to find me, lurking in the dens of madness. And I'll be happy to share more mind-bending nonsense." With that, he walked away, leaving her alone, a dethroned tyrant grappling with the ruin of her empire. Outside, the planet was in a state of strange upheaval. The once synchronized drones were milling around, uncertain and frightened. Freed prisoners navigated the now weakened barriers, blinking in the harsh light of freedom. Gray flagged down a few from various species, instructing them to head toward the clearing and the space oddity. He took on the role of an impromptu guide, helping people find their bearings. A slender, avian-like alien approached, voice quavering. You have saved us. We have been trapped here for cycles. My people are scattered across the galaxy, some enslaved by her expansions. Can you help us reclaim them? Gray gave a tired smile. We'll figure something out. For now, let's get you out of here. My ship can't carry everyone at once, but we'll coordinate with some Alliance folks, maybe the black market if necessary, to evacuate survivors. Why? The alien asked softly. Why are you helping strangers? He shrugged. Someone's got to stand up to bullies, right? Might as well be me and my questionable taste in memes. The alien tilted its head, not comprehending the last word. Gray just laughed. Back in the clearing, the space oddity waited with its ramp lowered. A small crowd formed around it, some looking battered, others just dazed. A handful of the awakened drones also crept closer, timid and uncertain. Barney's voice piped through the external speakers. Sir, we're nearing capacity for safe takeoff. There are more survivors than we can carry if we want to maintain minimal flight efficiency. Gray surveyed the crowd, pressing his lips in frustration. We'll do multiple runs if we have to. But let's get some folks out now, especially the injured. A volunteer group from among the freed aliens stepped up. They promised to remain on the surface for the next round, possibly scrounging up other craft that had been left behind by the hive or had crash-landed earlier. Working together, they organized triage, with Gray assisting in medical checks as best he could. It was rough, improvised, but far better than captivity. It took hours to load the first batch. The ship's compartments were crowded, each seat or bunk shared by terrified former prisoners. A few of the newly freed drones huddled in corners, eyeing everyone with a mixture of curiosity and fear. Gray felt a pang of empathy. These creatures had never known individuality, never made decisions for themselves. Now they were thrust into the messy swirl of personal choice and the uncertain galaxy beyond. He hopped into the pilot's seat, scanning the instruments. Barney's calm but exasperated voice said, "We are dangerously over capacity, but I suppose that's never stopped you before." Gray chuckled. Never once. He engaged the engines. The space oddity rose, thrusters straining under the load. The clearing fell away beneath them, revealing a patchwork of throbbing organic structures. The largest of them, presumably the main hive complex, was already dimming as the psychic energy dissipated. Gray caught one last glimpse of the massive central chamber's dome, cracks forming along its surface. He guided the ship carefully through the atmosphere, then out into orbit. The battered patrol craft that he'd jammed earlier drifted aimlessly, still evidently incapacitated. Once free of the planet's gravitational pull, Gray set a course for the nearest known safe zone, an Alliance outpost a few systems away. They might not fully welcome refugees en masse, but it was a start. During the voyage, Gray walked through the corridors, checking on the passengers. Some had broken limbs or severe malnourishment. Others simply sat staring, trying to process their newfound freedom. The small pattern drone looked up at him as he passed. Its antennae twitched in a gesture reminiscent of a shy greeting. "What will become of us?" it asked. "We have only known the unity. Now I hear my own thoughts, and they frighten me." Gray knelt beside it. Being an individual can be scary, yeah? It means you have to make your own choices. But it also means you can create, dream, share ideas that nobody else could come up with. The drone studied his face. "You used your mind to defeat the Queen. You overcame unity with something else." He sighed, searching for simple explanation. "I basically weaponized the nonsense that comes from human culture. Our chaos. Don't get me wrong, not all of it is good. Some of it is downright silly or embarrassing. But it's ours. We can handle it because we've been grappling with it for centuries. An invader trying to read or control that swirl of contradictions usually ends up lost, or, in this case, tormented." The drone nodded slowly, though whether it fully understood was unclear. "I wish to learn more. Stick around," Gray said with a tired grin, "and I'll show you plenty. But let's get you a place to call your own first." The space oddity eventually exited hyperspace near an Alliance checkpoint. A hush fell among the refugees. They had no idea how they'd be received. The Alliance channels pinged, and Gray identified himself as an independent operator carrying rescued captives from a hive mind planet. After some startled chatter, The outpost granted them permission to dock. Alliance medics and security greeted them with astonishment as the ramp lowered. In the days that followed, Gray arranged for the refugees to receive care, lodging, and the possibility of transport back to their homeworlds. He gave statements to Alliance officers about the collapsed hive mind, describing the meltdown he'd orchestrated. They listened in awe, struggling to comprehend how a single human had toppled an entire telepathic empire with comedic data. Word spread fast, through official channels and rumor networks alike. One rumor claimed that the Queen had been heard screaming about the abominable mind of the hairless ape. Another insisted that certain drones on the planet had begun worshipping Gray as some cosmic trickster deity. At the outpost cafeteria, Gray overheard other mercenaries muttering that humans were more dangerous than they looked, especially the unhinged ones. He was sitting alone in a corner booth when a crystalline scholar, one of the freed captives, approached him. She introduced herself as Traylana, a researcher who had been captured while studying that hive planet's geology. She thanked him for the rescue and asked the question so many had. Why did you do this alone? Surely a large force could have helped you. Gray swirled the coffee-like beverage in his mug. A large force would have triggered an all-out war. The hive mind would have responded with overwhelming telepathic retaliation. I had to slip in under the radar, catch them off guard, and leverage their biggest vulnerability. Traylana nodded, translucent features shimmering under the overhead lights. Will you continue this fight if more fragments of the hive attempt to rebuild? He exhaled, thinking about the small pattern drone and others now grappling with a new existence. The galaxy is vast. If the Queen or her loyalists attempt to re-establish the old ways, I'll step in. Or maybe those who've tasted freedom will stand up for themselves. He paused, a wry grin spreading across his face. In the meantime, I've got a few trillion memes left in my repertoire. That should keep me busy. A soft beep on his wristcom signaled an incoming message. Barney's voice filled his ear. We've received word from other systems near the old hive territory. There are enclaves of drones uncertain how to live independently. They're requesting humanitarian or xenobiological assistance. Also, a few worlds that once cowered at the hive's expansion are celebrating your little stunt. Gray stood, leaving half his drink untouched. Then it looks like we've still got some work to do. He left the booth, heading back through the outpost's winding corridors. Everywhere he looked, someone recognized him and gave a respectful nod or a wide berth, uncertain if he was the galaxy's strangest hero or a walking mental hazard. He didn't mind the confusion. It suited him. Reaching the docking bay where the space oddity was moored, he paused to watch a group of refugees boarding a transport bound for safer planets. Among them was the pattern drone, accompanied by a small contingent of newly awakened drones. They saw Gray and waved, an awkward but genuine gesture. He raised a hand in return. The drone called out, "Thank you for letting us be ourselves." Gray nodded, and then they were gone, the transport's ramp closing behind them. A sense of quiet fulfillment mingled with an undercurrent of sadness in his chest. He'd played a part in giving them a chance at individuality, but their journey was just beginning. His life, too, was an unending frontier of possibilities and dangers. A few hours later, Gray was in the pilot's seat again, running pre-flight checks. Barney's voice sounded more animated than usual. "Sir, the Alliance is offering a formal commendation for your efforts. They want you to remain here for a ceremony next week. It involves a medal and a lot of speeches." Gray made a face. "That's my cue to leave. I don't do well with ceremonies. Let them keep their medal. Just ask them to route resources to those drone enclaves. That's enough for me." Barney was silent for a moment, then said softly, "Understood. Turn a course for we have no official assignment right now." "Where to?" A slow grin spread across Gray's face. "I hear rumors of an interstellar tyranny in the Vasher sector that claims to be unstoppable. Maybe I should pay them a visit, lighten the mood with some thoroughly insane data." Barney actually chuckled, a rare sound. "Plotting a course. You know, if you keep this up, you might accidentally bring peace to half the galaxy by driving dictators insane. Now that's a legacy I can live with, Gray said, punching the thrusters. The ship lifted off smoothly from the docking clamp, pivoting toward open space. He keyed in the autopilot and relaxed, letting the star-dappled void fill the view screen. The throbbing hum of the engines was steady and reassuring. As they cleared the outpost perimeter, a calm signal pinged. An unknown frequency. Gray opened the channel. A fuzzy hologram of a winged reptilian alien flickered into view. Is this the human who toppled the hive mind of the stellar veil? Gray raised an eyebrow. That's one way to put it. The alien's tone was part respectful, part fearful. We have heard stories. Telepathic conquerors are retreating from your region, speaking of a human whose mind is a labyrinth of madness. Is this how you protect your worlds? A laugh escaped Gray. Not an official policy, just a personal approach. But it seems effective, yeah. The alien nodded gravely. We lost many to the hive mind's expansions. Their freed survivors speak highly of you. If you ever cross our star lanes, our people will grant you hospitality. We do not fully understand your methods, but we are grateful. Glad to help, Gray said sincerely, then ended the transmission. He couldn't deny the warmth in his chest at these unexpected thanks. He leaned back in his seat, the starfield rolling past. Barney discreetly chimed in. Coordinates set for the Vasher sector. We'll have to do a short warp sequence, then a longer jump. Should I engage? Gray nodded. Go for it. The stars elongated into lines, the ship slipping into the dimension of faster-than-light travel. Gray stared at the streaks of light outside, letting his mind wander to all the corners of the galaxy he'd yet to see. He recalled the Queen's question echoing in his thoughts. Why aren't you afraid, human? He remembered the fury in her eyes when his reply, his mental onslaught, made her very blood run cold. He realized, deep down, that he was indeed afraid sometimes. Everyone had fears, but for him, fear was overshadowed by an insatiable curiosity and a rebellious streak as wide as the Milky Way. If a vast telepathic empire demanded he kneel, his reflex was to stand tall and crack a joke, even if it meant risking everything. And if that empire tried to control his mind, he'd happily serve them the most disorienting data buffet in the cosmos. He dozed lightly, lulled by the hum of the engines. Eventually, Barney's voice roused him. Exiting warp in 5 minutes, sir. Next jump will take us near the Vasher sector. It's rumored to be governed by the Black Sun Dominion. Catchy name, Gray muttered, rubbing his eyes. Let's see if they're as tough as they sound. He glanced at the time. It had been only a few days since he left the hive mind planet behind. News likely was still traveling, or maybe would never fully convey the strangeness of that victory. If the Dominion tried the same telepathic trick, they might end up with the same disastrous meltdown. If they resorted to brute force, Gray's ship might not be able to outgun them. But that was tomorrow's problem. Today, he just wanted a moment of calm. He absently checked the cargo hold cameras. Some leftover crates from the rescued detainees remained, filled with personal artifacts that needed returning. He'd have to get them to the right owners eventually. Another crate contained a variety of Earth items he was bringing to the next black market station. Random t-shirts with slogans from centuries past, outdated game consoles, novelty plushies. They were mostly worthless, except to collectors who paid a fortune for genuine Earth relics. Gray found it both absurd and profitable. So, Barney said after a moment, I've been analyzing the hive meltdown data. You realize you've introduced a phenomenon that some xenopsychologists are calling mimetic poisoning? They're seriously discussing whether your brand of mental chaos should be classified as a biohazard. Gray scoffed. Our brains are a biohazard? I love it. Add that to the travel advisory. Warning. Humans may cause confusion and possible meltdown if telepathically probed. Proceed with caution. That'd keep the telepaths off our backs. Barney let out something akin to a chuckle. Yes, I can see the advisories now. Keep a safe mental distance from Florida man-mind syndrome. That's what they're calling it in some circles, by the way. Florida, Gray repeated with a nostalgic grin, remembering Earth's bizarre region that produced countless insane news stories. I may not be from there personally, but I appreciate the homage. We're all a little Florida on the inside. The ship dropped out of warp, the the starfield stabilizing. Gray double-checked the sensors and found themselves in empty space, just a short distance from the next jump point. He felt that familiar mixture of excitement and trepidation whenever he approached a new region rumored to be under a tyrant's control. He'd drop by, see if something needed subverting, maybe fling some more comedic chaos around. He'd either end up fleeing with an entire fleet on his tail, or coaxing them into some humiliating meltdown. Either way, it wouldn't be dull. He engaged the next FTL jump. As the engine spooled up, he looked out one last time at the cosmic emptiness. "Barney, let's keep a copy of that meltdown data, in case we run into other telepathic nightmares." "Already saved, sir," the AI replied. "Should I prepare the baby shark protocols as well?" Gray barked a laugh. "You bet. That one's proven itself unstoppable." The ship soared into the warp corridor. Gray closed his eyes. The memory of the Queen's face, contorted in horror at the unrelenting influx of comedic nonsense, still sent a ripple of satisfaction through him. In the grand scheme of things, he wasn't the strongest warrior or the smartest strategist, but he had an advantage that defied logic, a brain so stuffed with contradictory fragments of humor, pop culture, and random trivia that trying to dominate it telepathically was like trying to wrestle a tornado of confetti. And so, he ventured on, the self-appointed madman with a starship full of jokes, memes, and defiance. Throughout the galaxy, rumors spread. Some called him a hero, others a lunatic. All agreed that if you tried to crawl into his head, you'd regret it. He'd roam the stars, facing new tyrants, freeing the oppressed whenever he could, and leaving behind a legacy of chaos that might just galvanize the powerless to rise up. For Gray Henderson, it was enough to know that in a universe full of conquerors and psychic empires, a lone human mind, armed with comedic anarchy, had made the queen of an entire hive mind tremble. And that was only the beginning. Selena Ward stood beneath the arched skylights of the reformed High Council's grand atrium, her gaze drifting over countless alien delegates who moved in swirls of color and motion. This place was meant to be a symbol of a new era, one where old suspicions were laid to rest and a genuine partnership among the galactic species could flourish. Yet Selena could sense the same undercurrent of mistrust that had pervaded the old council chambers before the upheaval of years past. She, more than most, understood that grudges did not simply vanish because a new name was assigned to the ruling body. Standing there in her formal ambassadorial uniform, she felt the weight of every assumption these alien representatives made about humanity pressing down on her. A pair of tall, spindle-limbed Arvex attendants strode by, their ornate robes sweeping the marbled floor, tentacle-like arms folded. Selena had heard rumors that the Arvex were a rising power in the Reformed Council, even though they had not played a public role in the previous crisis that nearly tore the galaxy apart. Officially, they claimed to support the new spirit of unity. Off the record, certain intelligence reports indicated that the Arvex might be shaping a renewed containment strategy against humans. Their leader, the so-called Council Elder Vacheron, was rumored to harbor distrust of any species that hailed from what was classified as a death world. Selena let out a small sigh. She had come here today to propose a grand project that could benefit everyone, but she already braced for the resistance she would face. In her private chamber later that day, Selena met with General Rayfield Nakamura, who was visiting from Earth primarily to oversee security measures around the Terra Nova Gateway project. The new initiative aimed to build a set of linked jump gates capable of drastically cutting travel time between Earth's solar system and several resource-rich star clusters. Nakamura's expression was calm, but intense as he reviewed the daily briefs. He was an imposing figure with a subtlety that matched Selena's refined demeanor, and their long history of collaboration gave them a near-wordless understanding. Selena's reasons for championing the project were altruistic: shared resources, interdependence, and the forging of genuine goodwill. Nakamura had a broader view. He understood the necessity of bridging distances for strategic defense. The galaxy, for all its talk of peace, was not entirely stable. They left the private office together and navigated the labyrinthine corridors of the Grand Atrium, heading for the main council session where Selena was due to present the Terra Nova Gateway's benefits. On the way, they passed a swirling mosaic that depicted the so-called Great Reconciliation, images of dozens of alien species standing united after the last series of political upheavals. The mosaic had been installed to remind everyone of the cost of war. The stylized section that represented humans was nearly lost among the shimmering portrayal of more established species. Selena paused, observing how small and contained humanity looked in that piece of art. The irony was not lost on her. The council session that followed was polite but tense. Selena advanced to the speaking podium and provided a meticulous overview of the Terra Nova Gateway project, advanced jump gate technologies, power requirements, potential trade routes. Her voice carried a sincere enthusiasm for cooperation. An undercurrent of murmurs rustled through the chamber. Elder Vashran of the Arvex stepped forward once Selena concluded. His elongated face, with luminous eyes that seemed to flicker, gave an impression of feigned interest. He offered careful praise for the project's vision, only to follow with a series of pointed questions about its true capacity, the safety measures that prevented unauthorized militarization, and, most tellingly, how humanity expected the rest of the galaxy to accept such a giant leap in travel infrastructure when Earth's people had a reputation for unpredictability. Selena answered each query calmly, citing the project's transparent design and the strict oversight protocols that included multi-species committees. Yet despite her polished responses, she sensed a chill behind Vashran's measured courtesy. When she glanced at General Nakamura, she caught a slight narrowing of his eyes. He, too, perceived the layers of insinuation. Even though no one said so outright, it was clear that certain factions believed the humans might be scheming to expand their reach, just as they supposedly had tried before. Decades had passed since humans first demonstrated that they would not be contained like meek newcomers. But no matter how often humanity sought to prove themselves responsible and cooperative, fears seemed to linger. The council took Selena's proposal under advisement, which was diplomatic code for stalling. That evening, she gathered with Nakamura in a quiet lounge reserved for interspecies diplomatic staff. Tall windows offered a view of stars beyond the station's energy shielding. Selena rubbed the back of her neck, tension radiating through her shoulders. Nakamura, standing at her side, wore his usual careful mask, but the muscle ticking along his jaw suggested annoyance. He laid a data slate on the small table between them and gave her a sober look. According to the preliminary intelligence, multiple delegates had expressed private reservations about letting humans build a massive, galaxy-spanning transportation network. Some believed it would give Earth a dangerous amount of leverage. That same night, something unexpected happened in Azure Station, a major science outpost where top human researchers were working with various alien specialists on components for the Terra Nova Gate. Selena and Nakamura received an urgent message. There had been an explosion in one of the gate prototype labs. Casualties were minimal, but the resulting damage had set back research by weeks. More troubling was the suggestion that the cause was not accidental. Traces of a high-energy device reminiscent of old Pax Law sabotage signatures had been found. The security footage was conveniently corrupted. Selena's jaw clenched as she stared at the scrambled video feed. The notion that after so many years, someone might be using the same underhanded methods to sabotage human progress made her stomach twist. Nakamura immediately dispatched an investigative team, an interstellar investigation unit composed of humans and allied species skilled at detection, to Azure Station. Selena prepared to file an official report to the Council. Her mind buzzed with worry. If another sabotage campaign was indeed underway, it threatened not only the Terra Nova Gateway, but also the fragile trust that humanity had spent years nurturing. As she closed her eyes that night, her thoughts returned to the old mosaic she'd seen in the corridor. Humanity's image had been so small, as though overshadowed by more grandiose civilizations. Yet anyone who truly understood Earth's history, its seismic upheavals, predatory wildlife, lethal viruses, knew that humans had survived and thrived by adapting relentlessly. The last time certain factions in the Council underestimated humans, they witnessed a revelation that shook the galaxy. Selena quietly vowed that she would not let sabotage or fear-mongering undo the progress they had earned, even if it meant reminding everyone what a Death World species was truly capable of. In the days after the explosion on Azure Station, the Interstellar Investigation Unit combed through every inch of the lab. Pieces of twisted metal were meticulously analyzed for microfractures that might reveal the energy signature of the device used. No official blame was cast yet, but rumors spread through media outlets across Council space. Some commentators brazenly claimed humans had orchestrated the event themselves to secure a sympathetic majority vote for the Terra Nova Gateway. Others suggested an extremist group of unknown origin was trying to sow discord. Several suspicious hints pointed back to technology traces reminiscent of old sabotage methods used during the Arcturus tragedy, evidence that triggered faint echoes of fear among those who recalled how close the previous conflict had come to open war. Selena tried to calm those rumors by holding a public address at the Reform Council's briefing hall, where she stressed that humanity did not aim to accuse any party without solid proof. Her measured tone, however, didn't prevent certain delegates from insinuating that Earth's representatives might be stirring the pot to accelerate a militaristic agenda. Within closed doors, she voiced her suspicions to Nakamura. The well-patterned sabotage, the references to archaic Pax law engineering, it seemed too orchestrated to be a random terrorist act. The name Arvex Initiative began circulating in intelligence whispers, though no direct evidence tied it to the sabotage. The Arvex themselves publicly lamented the unfortunate accident, but offered no real assistance. Something dark was brewing beneath the polished veneer of the Reform Council. Meanwhile, Selena noticed an uptick in unusual contacts from the Myriad Network, an intelligence collective that included shapeshifters adept at infiltration. Officially, the Myriad Network was neutral, always offering its services to maintain galactic stability. But she had learned from bitter experience that neutrality often cloaked hidden interests. She instructed the smaller Earth-based intelligence cells stationed around the Council capital to keep a watchful eye on Myriad operatives, who were suddenly appearing at every corridor corner. To Selena, it was yet another sign that the sabotage on Azure Station might just be the beginning. When the Interstellar Investigation Unit finally produced a preliminary report, it contained enough disturbing threads to confirm their worst suspicions. Specific data fragments matched old sabotage patterns that were used to cripple the Arcturus colony generations ago. This time, the sabotage was targeted at Earth's advanced research facilities, hinting that certain factions in the Council had never truly accepted humanity's role as an equal partner. The sabotage was likely intended to trigger new crises or erode faith in humanity's ability to lead significant projects. If that was the goal, it was working. Anxiety spiked among the populace on many worlds that relied on stable commerce. And talk of an impending crisis overshadowed the Terra Nova Project's promised benefits. Selena presented the partial findings to a segment of the Council, only to face immediate pushback. Elder Vacheron of the Arvex took the lead, questioning the authenticity of the data. He went so far as to cast doubt on the unproven reliability of human-led investigations. Subtly, he fanned the flames of suspicion that humans might be faking an elaborate crisis to justify imposing new technology or even militarizing. Plenty of delegates, uncertain of the truth, demanded an independent inquiry. The result was paralysis. Official votes on the Terra Nova Gateway were postponed yet again, and the sabotage investigation remained in bureaucratic limbo. Anger simmered in private among humanity's leadership. Nakamura, typically calm, was so disturbed by the Council's reaction that he summoned a classified meeting aboard a discreet Earth vessel docked far from prying eyes. He connected via quantum-secure lines to members of the Earth High Command and to a small circle of allied species who had proven their loyalty. The question on everyone's mind was simple. What if the sabotage was just a precursor to a broader plan to contain or even strike at Earth's growing influence? Nakamura concluded they needed to prepare for the worst. He discreetly mobilized the Special Task Fleet Omega, an elite force that had been on standby for emergencies. There was no immediate plan to launch, but simply ensuring their readiness was crucial. History had taught humanity that in a galaxy full of competing agendas, waiting passively could be fatal. Meanwhile, Selena leveraged every diplomatic channel she had to try to isolate those who might be fueling the sabotage. It was a game of cloak and dagger, but it was one humanity had played before. As the days turned into weeks, tension mounted across Council space. The sabotage at Azure Station dominated conversation across 1,000 worlds. Council committees argued and accomplished nothing. The Arvex initiative rumor grew louder in underground circles. On certain fringe worlds, protest movements broke out, fueled by hysteria that the Deathworlders are about to lash out again. The seeds of discord had been planted, and they began to grow into a tangled web of suspicion. Selena watched it all unfold with a quiet resolve, determined not to see all her work unravel. She remembered all too well how easily the last major conflict had escalated once fear took hold of the alien minds that presumed humans to be unpredictable brutes. Late one evening, Selena received a message from a contact in the Myriad network, delivered through a covert channel. The Myriad operative, calling themselves Oviel, claimed to have evidence of a plan orchestrated by a hidden cabal known as the Arvex Initiative. In exchange for safety and asylum, Oviel was willing to provide documentation that would confirm the sabotage on Azure Station was part of a larger design to stoke enough tension that the Council would clamp down on humanity once more. Selena's heart thundered as she read the message. If this was genuine, it could be the key to exposing the orchestrators of the crisis. The question was, could she trust a Myriad operative who might have their own hidden motives? She contacted Nakamura immediately, deciding to take that gamble. Humanity had endured sabotage and conspiracies before, and if they were truly dealing with a resurgence of extremist tactics, only hard evidence could shift the tide. The next steps would be risky. They would have to retrieve the proof in a setting beyond Council control, away from the watchful eyes that might intervene. Selena realized that if they succeeded, they would have a chance to root out those who sought to undermine Earth's stance. And if they failed, the entire galaxy might revert to seeing humans as either aggressors or hapless victims. Neither was acceptable. Humanity stood on a precipice once again, with trust eroding around them. It was time to discover just how far their enemies were prepared to go. Selena arranged to meet Oviel on a remote station at the edge of Council space. The outpost, a worn relic from an era of deep space exploration, was now mostly inhabited by traders and independent miners. The place was a maze of corridors illuminated by flickering lights, its docking platforms corroded with centuries of micro-impacts. Amid the gloom of old neon signs and half-functioning atmosphere regulators, the environment provided a perfect opportunity for a discreet rendezvous. Nakamura insisted on accompanying her, along with a small security detachment that wore civilian garments to avoid drawing suspicion. He carried himself like a man ready for trouble, scanning every passage as they moved deeper into the station. They found Oviel waiting in a sealed booth near a half-abandoned loading bay. The Myriad operative stood about a head taller than Selena, their features subtly shifting, a hallmark of Myriad physiology. She recognized the tension in their posture, somewhat afraid of being followed. Oviel slid a data crystal across the table. In exchange, Selena handed over a small device guaranteeing an encrypted link to a safe haven within Earth's protective spheres. Oviel's whispery voice explained that the Arvex Initiative was not merely a faction. It was a carefully orchestrated network of conspirators who believed the Council had capitulated to humans too easily after the previous crisis. They had recruited individuals within the Pact's law remnants, and they had found allies in parts of the Myriad network that believed a final confrontation with Earth was inevitable. Selena, glancing over the data on a handheld terminal, felt her breath catch in her throat. The files outlined a multi-stage plan. Step 1. Sabotage key human projects to provoke fear that humans were staging incidents to expand militarily. Step 2. Orchestrate a defensive measure by pushing the Council to pass new restrictions on human spacefaring technology, including the Terra Nova Gateway. Step 3. If humanity resisted, unleash targeted strikes against human outposts, crippling them before they could mobilize their rumored advanced fleets. Throughout the file, references to Arcturus-level sabotage made her recall the old horrors that cost hundreds of human lives back then. The Arvex initiative wanted to replicate that. It was chillingly direct. The transmission concluded with a dire note. The conspirators believed that once they caused enough panic, the Reformed Council would collectively blame humans for escalating tensions. In other words, a repeat of the old pattern, but on a far larger scale. Armed with this data crystal, Selena and Nakamura left the booth. Nakamura's jaw set in grim determination as he signaled their security detail. They knew they had to present this evidence to the Council swiftly. But even as they maneuvered through the dingy corridors, one of their guards murmured an urgent warning. They were being followed. A chaotic pursuit ensued, with half-seen figures firing energy pulses in the dimly lit corridors. Selena's team took cover behind stacked cargo containers, while Nakamura and the security detail returned fire with precision. The station's alarm klaxons droned, sending panicked traders and miners scrambling. In the confusion, Oviel vanished. Selena hoped they had escaped unharmed. Eventually, Nakamura's team subdued 3 hostiles wearing advanced personal shields that bore design elements reminiscent of Pax Law. The presence of such gear confirmed the infiltration ran deeper than expected. There was no time to interrogate them on-site. Instead, Nakamura disabled their gear, confiscated their sidearms, and forced a swift extraction back to their waiting ship. They emerged from that showdown with the precious data crystal intact. Within hours, Selena brought it before the Reformed Council in an urgent session. Projected onto the central dais were unmistakable records of covert communications among Arvex initiative leaders discussing the sabotage at Azure Station. There were references to possible second-stage attacks, including infiltration of Earth's new jump gate facilities. Gasps and whispers rippled through the Council. For a moment, it appeared the truth might finally come to light and rally the majority to humanity's side. Elder Vashran responded with an indignant rebuttal, claiming the data was a fabrication. Despite the damning clarity of the evidence, many delegates were hesitant, uncertain if they should trust a data source provided by a myriad turncoat. The debate devolved into accusations of forgery, echoing the same old pattern of denial that had plagued the prior crisis. Selena's frustration boiled beneath the surface, though she maintained a diplomatic facade. While the Council argued, fresh news came from the frontier. An unidentified fleet was moving dangerously close to Earth's boundary, near the orbits of Pluto and Neptune. Long-range scans indicated the ships weren't officially registered under the Council's recognized navies. The speculation was swift. They bore partial signatures from Myriad, Pax Law, and possibly Arvex design elements. Media outlets spun wild theories. Some insisted it was a ragtag group of mercenaries hired by humanity to stage an incident. Others called it the opening gambit of a new war. The Reformed Council, paralyzed by infighting, offered no consensus. Nakamura convened an emergency conference with Selena and other high-level human officials. Their watchword was readiness. Earth's outer defense rings, manned by watch stations near the Kuiper Belt, went on alert. Meanwhile, intelligence gleaned from the captured saboteurs suggested the approaching fleet intended to strike at human outposts, testing the waters to see if humans would retaliate. It seemed a near certainty that if the conspirators succeeded in luring Earth into a direct confrontation, the rest of the Council might see it as humanity launching a war. A classic false flag approach. Amid this mounting tension, Selena made a final bid for reason at the Council dais. She told them plainly that a hostile force, obviously linked to the sabotage network, was encroaching on human territory. She cautioned that Earth would not stand idly by if attacked. If the Council sincerely desired to avert conflict, they had to move decisively against the Arvex initiative. But as she spoke, she read the uncertainty in the eyes of numerous delegates. Some still believed that humans, with their Death World heritage, might overreact in a destructive way. Others seemed paralyzed by fear of entangling themselves in a direct confrontation. The scene dripped with irony. After so many years, the galaxy still saw humans through the lens of suspicion, even when humans were the ones under threat. By the time Selena concluded her plea, the Council remained deadlocked. The unregistered fleet was hours away from crossing a line that Earth's defense protocols would interpret as an act of aggression. Selena and Nakamura exchanged a silent look. They both knew a line was about to be crossed, and once it was, the question wasn't who started it, but how thoroughly humanity would finish it. A subtle tension settled over everything, like the moment before a predator strikes or flees. The conspirators believed humans had grown complacent or weak, lulled by attempts at peace. They were about to discover how mistaken that assumption was. The unregistered fleet arrived in the outer solar system at precisely 0300 station time. Drifting along the fringes of the Kuiper Belt, they moved in a spread-out formation that suggested both a blockade and a probing maneuver. Earth's watch stations pinged them for identification, receiving no reply. General Nakamura stood in the central command chamber of Earth's orbital defense network, monitoring the incoming telemetry through a massive wraparound display. Pings lit up, revealing the fleet's composition: a half-dozen capital ships, a cluster of smaller escort vessels, each featuring irregular modifications. Some were reminiscent of myriad stealth hulls, while others bore energy conduits common to Pax Law warships. A mismatch, but altogether lethal enough to pose a genuine threat if they advanced. Nakamura authorized the next level of readiness for Earth's outer defense perimeter. Automated railguns on dwarf planets came online, cloaked frigates moved into flanking positions, and stealth drones began scanning for weaknesses in the intruder's formation. There was no immediate order to fire, but the tension was a clenched fist waiting to strike. He used a secure quantum channel to loop in Selena, who was still on the Council station. Quietly, she stood in a side chamber, watching a private feed of the situation. The session in the main hall continued to bicker, as though oblivious to how close the galaxy stood to another open conflict. Moments later, the intruding fleet opened fire on Lagrange Station, a vital communications hub that sat near Earth's gravitational sweet spots. The assault was swift and purposeful, targeting station sensors and shield generators to disable it. Alarms blared across Earth's network. This was no feint. The defenders responded immediately. Nakamura's lips thinned as he relayed orders to the Special Task Fleet Omega, an elite formation that had been standing by for precisely this scenario. Within minutes, the dark expanse of space lit up with particle beams and railgun streaks as Earth's forces engaged the hostile fleet. The invaders fought with surprising coordination. Nakamura suspected they'd trained specifically to breach Earth's perimeter. Yet they hadn't anticipated the new upgrades humanity had quietly developed. The hyper-adaptive shielding, based on advanced research gleaned from the planet's own microbial resilience, allowed Earth ships to reconfigure their energy barriers in real time. Laser pulses flared harmlessly off the shimmering surfaces of human warships, while humanity's return fire found weaknesses in the crudely spliced alien hull designs. Within the first 30 minutes, 3 enemy vessels were heavily damaged. News of the attack flashed across every major channel throughout Council space. Selena demanded an immediate emergency session. This time, the delegates raced to the chamber, faces pale or scaled or tentacled in shock at the brazen assault. The official feeds showed real-time glimpses of the outer solar system, human ships pushing back the aggressors with lethal efficiency. Arvex representatives tried to stir confusion, claiming there was no proof these attackers were connected to any official Council species. But Selena was prepared. She had seized the moment, presenting the data from OVL along with newly intercepted transmissions from the attacking ships. The transmissions referenced orders from Initiative Central, containing mention of an Arvex command node. A hush fell upon the council chamber, punctuated only by the crackle of official updates detailing how Earth's fleet was systematically routing the aggressors. Elder Vacheron rose to protest, but the tide turned against him. Delegates who once harbored quiet doubts about humanity now saw with their own eyes that Earth had been forced to defend itself. The skill and power on display reminded everyone of the old adage: if Deathworlders truly unleash their potential, the consequences would be dire. Before long, the counselors demanded to know if the Arvex had orchestrated this. Vacheron's frantic denials grew hollow when confronted by Selena's evidence. As the truth spilled out, it became clear that the Arvex initiative had manipulated multiple networks to field a rogue fleet, aiming to either force Earth into a humiliating retreat or provoke them into a reaction that the Council would blame on humans. While the Council sessions erupted into calls for investigations and arrests, the battle in the outer solar system neared its climax. Nakamura's forces cornered the largest enemy capital ship near the orbit of Neptune, crippling its engines. In a final demonstration of advanced tactics, Omega Strike teams boarded the vessel. Within half an hour, they secured the bridge, capturing logs and communications that linked back to the conspirators. The operation was swift and decisive, with minimal casualties on the human side. As the boarded vessel drifted in silent surrender, the rest of the rogue fleet scattered. Most were destroyed in the retreat, though a handful managed to jump away. By the time the dust settled, Earth's defense ring stood intact, the battered wrecks of the attacking ships a stark testament to the folly of provoking a Deathworld species. The galaxy watched, transfixed, as official transmissions from Earth declared they had successfully repelled an unprovoked attack. If anyone needed proof that humanity had not been exaggerating their capabilities, they now had it broadcast across every major channel. The message was unequivocal. Earth had attempted to play nice, but faced with orchestrated aggression, they would reveal exactly why survival on a world like theirs bred an unparalleled resilience. Back at the council station, Selena was flanked by the newly emboldened delegates who demanded accountability. She could feel a wave of shifting sentiment. Fear was still present, fear of human power, but it was now coupled with outrage that certain factions had nearly dragged the galaxy into another war. Elder Vacheron and his closest allies tried to flee. Security forces apprehended them before they could depart the station. Under immediate interrogation, it emerged that the Arvex initiative had meticulously planned the sabotage campaign and the infiltration of human territory. Vacheron's own messages revealed references to finishing what others started at Arcturus, an explicit nod to sabotage that once cost so many human lives. This entire confrontation had escalated with startling speed. Nakamura gave orders for Earth's fleet to maintain defensive positions. Humanity had proven its might, but it had no desire to conquer or terrorize. They were past the point of illusions, though. With open war averted for now, the question hung in the air: how would the Council respond? Would the galaxy learn to treat humans as equals? Or would these cycles of sabotage and suspicion simply repeat? Before Selena's eyes, she saw an opening. Delegates who had once dragged their feet on the Terra Nova Gateway now recognized that encouraging mutual cooperation might be the best means to ensure stability. The seeds of confrontation had blossomed into a demonstration that reminded them all of what a Deathworld heritage truly meant. And just as swiftly, it underlined humanity's preference to contain conflicts rather than escalate them. It was a unique moment in galactic politics, perched between fear and opportunity. The next decisions would shape the Council for years to come. The reformed High Council took nearly 3 days of non-stop sessions to process the revelations. Endless streams of data from Earth's security forces and confessions extracted from captured conspirators spilled into the official record. Some delegates appeared mortified that the old sabotage tactics from decades before were still lurking in the shadows of galactic politics. Others wondered how so many could have been blind to the Arvex initiative's duplicity. The final outcome was a unanimous, though tense, vote to condemn the rogue attackers and authorize a sweeping investigation. Key Arvex leaders, including Elder Vashran, were stripped of diplomatic immunity and put under formal arrest. Their network's assets were frozen, and specialized teams began dismantling the infrastructure that supported them. Selena stood at the center of the council floor when the results of the emergency vote were announced. Her shoulders felt lighter than they had in weeks. She had half expected a divided or inconclusive resolution, but the unprovoked attack on Earth had been the deciding factor. The infiltration, sabotage, and disastrous attempt to breach Earth's defenses had rattled even the most cynical delegates. With the truth laid bare, the opposition's grip crumbled. The shift in the chamber's atmosphere was palpable, from a tense skepticism to a cautious willingness to see humanity as a genuine partner. In the days that followed, attention swung back to the Terra Nova Gateway project, the very proposal that had sparked so much controversy. Delegates who once hedged and delayed now signaled their support, citing that open, transparent infrastructure was precisely the sort of initiative that could prevent clandestine fleets from gathering in unexplored sectors of space. The jump gates would knit the galaxy closer together, providing reliable paths that would be easier to monitor than hidden warp routes. The Council recognized an opportunity to rebuild trust and to profit from the trade possibilities that Terra Nova offered. This time, the vote of approval passed with a strong majority. Selena couldn't help but think it was all deeply ironic. Had the Arvex initiative not tried to sabotage the project, the Council might have remained stuck in endless debate. While construction resumed at Azure Station and other key locations, a subcouncil was formed to oversee legal proceedings against the conspirators. At a grand tribunal convened aboard the Orion Hub, a floating judicial station that orbited a quiet binary star system, the galaxy witnessed a level of accountability rarely seen. Representatives from Earth sat alongside officials from other species to review evidence, call witnesses, and lay bare the entire chain of sabotage. News networks broadcast the proceedings in multiple languages. Spectators across thousands of worlds saw how carefully orchestrated fear and resentment had nearly triggered a war. The message was stark. Intimidation was no match for determined unity. Selena played an instrumental role in these proceedings, providing testimony about the initial sabotage reports, the data from Oviel, and the confrontation at the remote station where she nearly lost her life. Some delegates whispered about how remarkable it was that humans had managed to remain so composed despite repeated provocations. Others watched with a cautious gaze, mindful that behind humanity's diplomacy lay a formidable capacity for decisive action. Meanwhile, Nakamura remained in close contact with Earth's military command, ensuring that the fleet stayed alert. The threat of smaller, scattered cells of the Arvex initiative persisted, but their power was broken for now. When the tribunal concluded, sentences were pronounced, condemning the central conspirators to a variety of punishments that the Council deemed severe but not barbaric. Elder Vashran was found guilty of high treason against the reformed High Council. Prison cells built to contain the most dangerous criminals awaited him and his inner circle. Their fall from grace was swift and spectacular, a reminder of how uncertain power could be when it hinged on lies and sabotage. Thus ended the Arvex initiative in a swirl of public disgrace. Humanity did not emerge unscathed from these events. Dozens of families lost loved ones in the initial explosion at Azure Station and the brief but brutal skirmishes around Lagrange Station. Despite the skillful defense, some of the outposts endured damage that would take time and resources to rebuild. Public sentiment across Earth and its colonies hovered between relief that a larger war had been averted and anger at having to once again fend off covert aggression. A familiar refrain circulated in newscasts and personal conversations. How many more times would humanity have to prove they were not to be trifled with? Yet in a milestone ceremony that seemed almost inconceivable mere weeks before, the Council's primary assembly chamber hosted a formal signing event. Humanity was confirmed as a permanent equal partner in the reformed High Council, with the newly ratified Terra Nova Gateway recognized as an official interstellar infrastructure project. Representatives from numerous species lined up to offer their collaboration, from providing specialized crystals for gate stability to volunteering their workers to help with construction. The media called it a turning point, a triumph for transparency, while cynics insisted that fear of humanity's might had forced the Council's hand. Perhaps both assessments were true in their own way. After the signing, Selena stepped away from the limelight and found herself alone for the first time in days, standing by a grand panoramic window that looked out onto the swirling star fields around the Council station. She pressed a hand gently against the cool glass and breathed in relief. Her entire career had been built on the hope that Earth would stand among the galaxy's powers without resorting to endless cycles of violence. Now, at least officially, that hope had been codified. Nakamura approached, folding his arms as he took in the view. He reminded her that scattered cells of the Arvex initiative might still be active. Earth's intelligence services had uncovered talk of revenge among a few diehards, but they lacked the coordinated resources to pose a large-scale threat. Selena nodded. No system was ever completely free of hostility. A predator might always lurk in the shadows. But as a Death World species, humans understood that every day of peace was earned through vigilance and the willingness to respond if threatened. The difference, she thought, was that humans would not let themselves be defined by fear, neither the fear of others nor their own fear of conflict. Before they parted that evening, Nakamura and Selena paused to watch an incoming series of ships from Earth docking alongside vessels from the Tran Harmony, the Crystan Collective, and even some myriad ships. For once, the docking gates were not bristling with suspicion, but humming with cooperative energy. The future Terra Nova Gateway would take months or years to complete, but it was now a shared enterprise spanning multiple civilizations. The imposing warships that had only recently been in high alert hovered in the background, silent guardians that reminded any doubters of what might happen if humans were again pushed too far. Yet as the architects and engineers came together in this new era, the specter of sabotage and betrayal receded. From the vantage point of this fragile peace, many concluded that the greatest power humanity held was not just their advanced defenses or cunning strategies. It was their capacity to offer genuine cooperation even after repeated betrayals. Not because they were naive, but because they chose a path that honored the lessons of their Death World heritage without letting it consume them. Strength tempered by choice was more fearsome than raw might alone. As the days turned to weeks, and the Council adapted to the knowledge that certain factions had plotted behind the scenes, a new phrase began circulating in diplomatic circles. They truly are Death Worlders, but they prefer not to act like it unless cornered. For some, that was cause for lingering anxiety, a sense of walking on eggshells around a species who had shown they would fight like cornered beasts if provoked. For others, it was a source of admiration, an acknowledgement that the same adaptability and resilience that evolved under Earth's violent weather patterns and dangerous fauna had given humanity a unique perspective on how to handle political turbulence. In a universe that valued stability yet roiled with hidden tensions, the presence of a species that refused to be bullied while simultaneously refusing to become tyrants was more valuable than any might have imagined. When at last the final bureaucratic knots were untied and the last signatures were inked, Selena Ward found herself reflecting on the mosaic in the hallway, the one that showed a small human figure among a grand menagerie of alien species. Perhaps someone would commission a new mosaic, one that depicted humans at equal scale, forging jump gates, defending their homeworld, and standing side by side with their one-time antagonists to reshape the galaxy. Or maybe no mosaic could truly capture the complexity of a Death World species that learned to show mercy in a cosmos where power so often led to arrogance. If the old mosaic remained, It would stand as a reminder of how illusions of inferiority could be shattered by a single spark of truth. She pictured Earth's tumultuous skies, the planet that had spawned her kind, storms that could topple entire cities, earthquakes that split continents, microorganisms that adapted in days to new threats. Survival demanded creativity, determination, and, above all, resilience. It was the epitome of a death world environment. Yet somehow, across untold centuries, humanity had risen not merely to endure it, but to thrive. That essence of survival was etched in every diplomatic move, every strategic plan, every act of empathy. People often misunderstood that empathy was humanity's greatest triumph over their violent heritage. They could fight like demons when pushed, but they also knew how to choose peace over extermination. That choice defined them now in the eyes of a galaxy that once believed humans were too wild to be fully trusted. A galaxy that had finally seen, in the flash of beam weapons repelling an incursion at Neptune's orbit, the horrifying truth of what humans could do if they had to. Yet the outcome was not devastation or conquest, but a new treaty, a new alliance, and a step forward in forging genuine unity. Looking into the cosmic dark beyond the window, Selena Ward smiled. Perhaps, at long last, the rest of the galaxy would understand. You thought we were dangerous when we were playing nice? Now you've seen what happens when we become true Deathworlders. And still, we offer our hand in peace. The choice was theirs to accept or reject. Humanity would always be ready for better or worse.